You've probably asked yourself this question late at night, with a cat curled against your chest. Is it because she's a female, or would a male do the same? Here's something nobody tells you straight. The answer might shatter everything you believed about cats. For decades, breeders, vets, and your own grandmother repeated the same myth. And today, sitting right here with you, I'm going to take that myth apart, piece by piece. Because here's the truth that stings a little. Most of what you've heard about male versus female cats came from people guessing, from stories passed around kitchen tables, from assumptions dressed up as facts. And if you're over 40, you've heard all of them. Females are colder. Males are needy. Get a girl, she'll keep her distance. But what if every one of those lines was built on something far messier than science? Stay with me. Let me ask you something, and be honest as you listen. When you chose your cat, did someone whisper advice in your ear? Maybe a friend said males spray and roam. Maybe your mother swore females were aloof, like they were doing you a favor by existing. We carry these beliefs quietly. We don't question them. And then one day, our cat does something that contradicts everything. And we sit there confused, wondering if we got the wrong one. I've spent years listening to people talk about their cats, and the same thing happens again and again. A man tells me his big tomcat sleeps on his pillow every night, soft as a kitten. A woman tells me her female follows her room to room, crying when she leaves. Neither matches the story they were told. So who lied to us? Nobody, exactly. The truth is just buried under layers of habit, marketing, and old wives' tales we never bothered to dig through. Here's where it gets interesting, and where most videos stop short. Affection in cats isn't a switch flipped by gender. It's a slow blend of biology, hormones, early life, and something deeper that I'll get to soon. But there's a reason males so often get labeled the cuddly ones. And there's a reason females carry that independent reputation like a crown they never asked for. Both reasons are real. Both are incomplete. Let me show you why. Think back to when you were younger. Remember how people described boys and girls? Boys were rough, girls were sweet, and we nodded along like it was law. Then life happened, and we met gentle men and fierce women, and the neat little boxes fell apart. Cats are no different. We projected our own human scripts onto them. We saw what we expected to see. And our cats, bless them, just kept being cats, unbothered by our theories. There's a study I keep coming back to, one that surprised even the researchers. When they measured how cats behaved with the people who fed and cared for them daily, the gender gap nearly vanished. What mattered far more was something else entirely. Something you have far more control over than the cat's sex. And once you understand it, you'll never look at the male versus female debate the same way again. I'll unpack it slowly, so stay close. But before the science, let's sit with the feeling. Because that's really why you're here, isn't it? You want to know if the warmth you feel from your cat is real, or if you'd feel more from a different one. That ache to be chosen, to be loved by a small creature who could walk away anytime, that's deeply human. At 40, 50, beyond, we understand that hunger differently. We've earned the right to want gentle, uncomplicated affection. So let me make you a quiet promise for what's coming. I won't sell you a fairy tale. I won't tell you one sex is magically more loving so you feel good about your choice. Instead, I'll give you the messy, honest, fascinating truth. The kind that actually helps you understand the animal sharing your home right now. By the end, you'll see your cat with new eyes. And maybe you'll forgive yourself for a few old assumptions. Because this isn't really about males versus females. Not deep down. It's about how we love something that can't tell us how it loves us back. It's about reading silence, reading tales and purrs, and the weight of a body settling against ours at 3 a.m. That's the real mystery, and we're only just beginning to crack it open. So let me ask you, before we go further into the science that changed my mind completely, let's start with the hormones. because that's where the story truly begins. An intact male cat, one who hasn't been neutered, has testosterone running through him like a current. It pushes him outward, toward territory, toward roaming, toward marking everything he can reach. He's restless. Affection isn't his priority. Survival and dominance are. So if you've ever met an unneutered Tom, you've met a cat who barely had time for your lap. Now here's the twist that catches people off guard. The moment you neuter that same male, something shifts. The testosterone drops, the roaming urge fades, and suddenly that restless wanderer becomes a homebody. He looks for warmth. He looks for you. Many owners swear their male turned into a Velcro cat overnight after surgery. It's not magic. It's chemistry quieting down, letting a softer side step forward that was always there underneath. Females tell a different story, and it's just as fascinating. An intact female lives in cycles. When she's in heat, she can be loud, demanding, almost frantic with affection one minute, and irritable the next. It's confusing for anyone watching. You think you have a cold cat, then she's rolling at your feet, crying for attention. That's not her personality. That's her biology pulling the strings, the same way ours once did, if we're honest about it. Spay that female, and the cycles stop. The hormonal storm's quiet. What's left is her actual temperament, finally visible without the noise. And here's what surprises people most. A spayed female and a neutered male, raised in similar homes, often end up looking remarkably alike in how they bond. The dramatic gender gap people expect? It mostly belonged to the hormones, not the cats. Remove the hormones, and the line between them blurs. So here's the first real difference. And it's not the one you'd expect. Studies on spraying tell us intact males mark territory far more than females, sometimes 10 times as often. But neuter him, and that drops by up to 90%. Females spray too, especially in heat, just less. So the messy male myth? Half true, half hormones. Remove the hormones and the gap shrinks to almost nothing. Keep that ratio in mind. It comes back. But hormones are only one layer, and I promised you layers. Let's peel back the next one, because this is where it gets personal. Think about the first weeks of a kitten's life. Those tiny, blind, fragile days when the whole world is just warmth and milk and the heartbeat of others nearby. What happens in that window leaves a mark deeper than gender ever could. And most of us never see it, because it happens long before we bring them home. A kitten handled gently by humans in those early weeks learns something profound. It learns that big, strange creatures mean comfort, not danger. That lesson sinks in regardless of sex. A male kitten cuddled often becomes a trusting adult. A female kitten left alone becomes wary. Flip the situation, and you flip the outcome. The hand that touches them early writes more of their story than the body they were born into ever will. I think about this with people too, don't you? How much of who we became traces back to those first years we can't even remember. The arms that held us, the voices that soothed us. We like to think we chose our own warmth, our own ability to love. But so much was set before we had any say. Cats carry that same invisible inheritance. The affectionate lap cat and the skittish hider may differ by nothing but luck and timing. This is why two cats of the same sex, even the same litter, can turn out completely opposite. One bold and snuggly, one shy and distant. Same parents, same hormones, same gender. The difference lived in those silent early experiences, the ones no breeder writes on a certificate. So when someone tells you, get a male, they're friendlier, they're skipping the chapter that mattered most. They're handing you the cover and calling it the book. So let's gather what we've learned in this stretch. Gender sets a faint starting point. Hormones color the early picture loudly. But early handling, that quiet window of touch and trust, that's the brush that paints the lasting portrait. We're 3 layers deep now, and the simple male versus female question is already cracking apart in our hands. Yet there's another layer coming. one that surprised me more than all the rest combined. Here's the layer almost nobody talks about: the breed itself. Because lumping all cats together is like saying all people from one country act the same. A Siamese and a Persian might as well be from different planets. And within those breeds, the gender rules you've heard get thrown out the window entirely. Some breeds are famous for clingy males, others for devoted females. The pattern you trusted dissolves the moment you look closely. Take the ragdoll, that big, floppy, dog-like cat. Both males and females in this breed tend toward heavy affection. They go limp in your arms, follow you everywhere, greet you at the door. Gender barely registers. Then look at a more aloof breed, where even the cuddliest individual keeps a polite distance. In that breed, a needy male is still cooler than an independent female from a ragdoll line. Context changes everything, doesn't it? So when you picture the perfect affectionate cat, you're really picturing a tangle of factors: breed tendencies, hormonal status, early life, and only faintly, somewhere in the mix, the question of male or female. It's humbling, really. We want one clean answer, one rule to follow. But cats, like people, refuse to be that simple. They insist on being individuals. And maybe that's exactly why we love them the way we do. Let me tell you about something researchers noticed that I can't stop thinking about. When they studied which cats formed the strongest bonds with their owners, the winning factor wasn't sex at all. It was the relationship itself, the daily rhythm, the hours spent together, the trust built slowly, the way trust always builds. A cat bonds to the person who shows up, again and again. Gender be damned. Sound familiar? It should. Here's a difference researchers actually measured. When a stranger enters the room, males more often approach to investigate, while females more often retreat first, then assess from a distance. Bolder versus more cautious. But watch closely. That same cautious female, once she decides you're safe, often bonds harder and longer. The slow approach isn't less love. Sometimes it's the deeper kind. The kind that took work to earn. Now, I won't pretend there are zero patterns. That's its own kind of lie. Across large surveys, neutered males do tend to score slightly higher on sociability and willingness to share space with other cats. Females tend to be a touch more selective about touch, more particular about when and how. Real differences. But measured in inches, not miles. Nothing close to the canyon the old advice carved between them. Think of it this way. Imagine two rivers starting just a few feet apart at the top of a mountain. That tiny gap at the source feels enormous. But by the time they reach the valley, shaped by every rock and bend along the way, you can barely tell which is which. Gender is that small gap at the source. Life is the long journey down. And it's the journey, not the starting point, that decides where the warmth pools. I had a conversation once with a woman in her 60s who'd had cats her whole life. She told me something that stayed with me. She said, "I stopped picking by male or female years ago. Now I just look into their eyes at the shelter and wait for the one who looks back." And you know what? Her cats were always affectionate. Maybe because she chose connection over category. Maybe because love, given freely, tends to find its way home. That's the thing about the question we started with. Which one is more affectionate? It assumes affection is something you select, like a feature on a car. But you don't buy affection. You grow it. You earn it, slowly, in the quiet hours. The most loving cat in the world will close up in a cold home, and the most independent breed will soften under patient, steady warmth. The variable that matters most might just be you. So we've reached a turning point, you and I. We've dismantled the hormones, the early years, the breeds, the studies. We've seen how thin the gender line really is. But I haven't answered the deeper question yet, the one humming underneath all of this. If it's not really about male or female, then what are we actually choosing when we choose a cat? And why does it matter so much to our hearts? That's where we go next. When you choose a cat, you're not really choosing a sex. You're choosing a companion for the quiet seasons of your life. And if you're over 40, You know those seasons differently than you did at 20. The house may be emptier now. The kids grown, or gone, or busy. A spouse passed, or working long hours. Into that space walks a small creature who asks for little and gives something words can barely hold. That's the real choice. I've noticed that people our age form a particular kind of bond with their cats. Younger folks often want entertainment, a playful blur of energy. But by midlife, we crave something steadier. Presence. The weight of a warm body on the bed. The sound of purring that says, without saying, "You are not alone tonight." Whether that comfort comes from a male or female stops mattering. What matters is that it comes at all, and that it stays. There's a reason cats and older humans understand each other so well. We've both learned to value calm over chaos. We've both grown selective about who we let close. A cat doesn't perform friendship the way a dog might, all wags and slobber. A cat chooses you quietly, on its own terms, and that choosing feels earned. For someone who's lived enough to know how rare real connection is, that quiet choosing means everything. So let's revisit that old advice with fresh eyes. Get a female, she's lower maintenance. Get a male, he's more loving. Can you hear now how hollow it sounds? It treats a living being like an appliance, sorted by sex into neat little use cases. But the cat who will share your mornings and your griefs and your ordinary Tuesdays can't be predicted by anatomy. That cat reveals itself slowly, the way all the best things in life do. Let me give you a difference you can almost see. Multi-cat homes tell the story. Males, once neutered, more often pile together, sleep in heaps, share without much fuss. Females more often divide the house into territories, an invisible map of mine and yours. Not always, but often enough that shelter workers notice it. So if you want a second cat, this matters more than affection toward you. It shapes the peace of your whole home. Here's another real one, rooted deep in biology. Females carry maternal wiring even when spayed, even when they've never had kittens. Some show it by mothering you, grooming you, fussing over you, herding you to bed. Males more often show care through proximity and play, the guardian who patrols and stays near. Two different flavors of devotion, both ancient, both real. Neither is more love. They're just love in different accents. And here's a tender, measurable truth. Surveys of owners find that the cats described as shy at first often end up rated as the most affectionate of all, once trust is built. The wall, then the breakthrough. This shows up in both sexes, but it reminds us why first impressions lie. The cat hiding under your couch on day 1 may become the one sleeping on your chest by month 6. Patience is the real predictor, not anatomy. Maybe you've lived that with a person too. Someone guarded, hard to reach at first, who turned out to love the deepest once they let you in. The easy affection of the open-hearted is a gift, but the hard-won affection of the careful one, that's a treasure with a story behind it. Cats teach us this without meaning to. They remind us that the slowest yes is sometimes the truest. Gender has nothing to do with it. So if someone asks you now, which is more affectionate, males or females, you've earned a better answer than they expect. You can tell them the truth. It depends far less on sex than on everything else. On the cat's nature, on its past, on the home it lands in, on the patience of the person holding the door open. You can tell them the question itself is a little too small for the size of the answer. We're deep into this now, deeper than most ever go. We've taken a simple question and followed it down into hormones, history, breed, temperament, and the human heart. And we're not done. Because there's one more thing I want to explore with you. Something that flips the whole conversation around. Not which cat loves us more, but what our preference for one sex says about us. That mirror is waiting. Let's look into it together. Have you ever wondered why people insist so firmly on one sex over the other? I'm a male cat person. I only get females. Listen closely and you'll hear something interesting. Often the preference traces back to one cat, one beloved companion, years ago, who happened to be male or female. And that single cat became the template. We didn't choose a sex. We chose a memory and dressed it up as a rule. We've all done it. It's a beautiful, very human thing, really. We had one extraordinary cat, and we spend the rest of our lives trying to find that magic again. So we cling to the details we remember. She was a calico female, so I get calico females. As if the warmth lived in the color, in the sex, in the breed. But the warmth lived in the bond, in that specific cat, at that specific time in our lives. It can't be reordered like a part, and sometimes the preference hides a grief we haven't fully named. We lost a cat who meant the world, and choosing the same sex feels like staying loyal, like keeping a small flame lit. There's nothing wrong with that, but it can quietly close us off to a creature who might love us just as fiercely, simply because it arrived in a different body. The heart's logic is tender and a little stubborn. We're allowed to gently question it. I knew a man who swore he'd only ever bond with male cats. His childhood Tom had been his shadow, his confidant through hard years. Then, almost by accident, a stray female adopted him. Showed up at his door and refused to leave. Within months, he admitted, a little sheepishly, that she'd become the love of his life. The rule he'd held for decades dissolved against one persistent cat who didn't know she wasn't supposed to fit. That's the quiet lesson under all of this. The rules we make about love are usually just walls around old wounds. We say, this kind, not that kind, to protect ourselves from disappointment. But cats don't read our rules. They love sideways, unexpectedly, breaking through the categories we built. And when we let them, when we stay open, we discover the bond was never about the box at all. It was always about the meeting of two souls. Now let me bring us back to the practical, because I know some of you are still deciding. Maybe you're about to adopt, and you want guidance you can actually use. Here it is, plain and honest. Don't lead with sex. Lead with the meeting. Spend time with the cat. Watch how it responds to you, not to some idea of how its gender should act. The cat that leans into your hand is telling you more than any chart ever could. If you're adopting from a shelter, ask the staff a better question than, do you have males or females? Ask, which of these cats seeks out people? Ask, who here is gentle? Who's playful? Who likes to be held? The good shelters know their animals as individuals. They'll point you past the labels toward the temperament that fits your life. That conversation will serve you 1,000 times better than picking by sex alone. And if you already have your cat, male or female, here's what I hope you take from all this. Stop measuring them against a stereotype they never agreed to. If your female keeps her distance, she's not broken or cold. If your male is clingy, he's not strange. They are simply themselves, the sum of their nature and their history, and your home. Love the cat in front of you, not the one the myths told you to expect. Here's a heartbreak I've watched too often, and I'll be blunt. People return cats to shelters because the animal wasn't affectionate like its sex should be. A female who stayed independent, a male who stayed aloof. The cat pays the price for our broken expectations. Think about that. A living creature surrendered because it didn't match a myth. Drop the expectation, and you don't just keep the cat. You finally get to meet it. So we've turned the mirror on ourselves and seen something honest. Our preference for one sex often says more about our past than about the cat's. About a love we're chasing, a grief we're guarding, a rule we never examined. And that's okay. We're human. We carry our histories everywhere, even to the shelter door. But knowing this, we can choose more freely now. We can let the next cat be exactly who it is. There's more ahead. Let me take you into the science of how cats actually show affection, because this changes everything too. We expect love to look one way: cuddling, lap-sitting, purring. but cats speak a wider language than that. And here's the catch. Many of us miss the affection right in front of us because it doesn't match our human idea of love. We're waiting for a hug, while the cat is saying, "I love you," in a dozen other ways. Take the slow blink. When a cat looks at you and slowly closes its eyes, then opens them again, that's not sleepiness. That's a kiss. In cat language, closing your eyes near another creature means total trust, total safety. A cat who slow blinks at you is telling you it feels no threat in your presence. It's one of the deepest signals they offer. And both males and females do it, with no regard for our gender debate. Or consider the cat who follows you to the bathroom, who sits just outside the door, who insists on being in the same room without demanding to be touched. That's affection too. It's the quiet companionship of, "I want to be where you are." Some cats love loudly, climbing into laps. Others love by orbit, staying near, keeping watch. Neither is more real, and neither is reliably male or female. It's just their dialect of devotion. There's the headbutt too, the bunt, when a cat presses its forehead into you. They have scent glands there, and by rubbing you, they're marking you as theirs. Family, safe. A cat who headbutts you is claiming you in the gentlest possible way. I find that unbearably sweet, honestly. This small creature, choosing to fold you into its tiny circle of belonging. And again, sex doesn't decide who does it. Personality and trust do. Even the gift of a dead mouse, as grim as it sounds, is love in its rawest form. Or the kneading, those rhythmic paws pushing against your leg, a leftover comfort from nursing as a kitten. When a grown cat needs you, part of it is reaching back to the safest feeling it ever knew and connecting that feeling to you. That's not nothing. That's a creature telling you that you feel like home, like its first warmth. So why does this matter for our question? Because we keep scoring cats on lap sitting alone, and that single test is rigged. Some cats simply don't sit on laps, ever, and adore you completely. Studies of feline attachment find that secure cats, deeply bonded, don't all cuddle. Many just check that you're there, then relax. We were failing the affectionate ones on a test they were never built to pass. Time to throw out the test. I think we do this with people too, don't we? We wait for love to arrive in the form we imagined. Grand words, big gestures, and we miss the person who quietly fills our gas tank, who remembers how we take our coffee, who sits beside us in silence. Love rarely looks like the movies. With cats and with people both, the truest affection is often the quietest, hiding in plain sight, waiting for us to finally notice it. Here's an exercise I'd offer you. Tonight, watch your cat without expecting anything. Don't reach for them. Just observe. Notice where they choose to be. Notice if they track you with their eyes, if they settle when you settle, if they find their way to your side of the couch. You may discover your cat has been loving you all along, in a language you were never taught to hear. The affection was there. We just weren't fluent. And maybe that's the gift hidden in this whole question. Not an answer about males or females, but an invitation to pay closer attention. To stop asking which cat loves more, and start asking how this particular cat, mine, is loving me right now. That shift changes the relationship entirely. Suddenly you're not comparing. You're connecting. You're present. And presence, it turns out, is the soil where every real bond grows. So we've added another whole dimension. It's not just that gender barely predicts affection. It's that we often can't even see the affection we already have because we're looking for the wrong signs. We're 60 blocks deep into a question that keeps unfolding, like one of those nested boxes that never quite ends. And there's still more waiting inside. Because now, I want to talk about the bond that forms over years. Stay with me. The longer a cat lives with you, the more something remarkable happens. The early differences, hormonal, behavioral, even temperamental, begin to soften and blend into the shape of your shared life. A cat of 5 years with you is not the cat of 5 months. They've learned your moods, your schedule, the sound of your footsteps versus a stranger's. By then, asking if they're male or female is like asking the color of an old friend's eyes. Cats are quiet students of us, more than we realize. Research suggests they recognize their owner's voice and even respond differently to it than to a stranger's, though they often choose not to show it. They know your footsteps, your schedule, the particular silence that means you're sad. This attunement grows from years, not gender. A cat who studied you for half a decade knows you in ways that have nothing to do with being male or female. I've heard people describe their long-term cats almost like a spouse. He knows me better than anyone. She can tell when I've had a hard day, and I believe them. Because a bond measured in years stops being about the animal's category and becomes about the history written between you, the 1,000 mornings, the illnesses you nursed each other through. That's not male affection or female affection. That's just love, weathered and real. And here's something that catches in my throat a little. Our cats often outlast other things in our lives. Jobs change, people come and go, but the cat is there, steady, through the moves and the losses and the slow rearranging of a life. For someone over 40, that constancy is precious beyond words. The cat becomes a thread of continuity, a small warm anchor while everything else shifts. Their sex was never the point. Their staying was. If you've made it with me this far into our conversation, I want to pause and ask something of you. If you're finding value here, if any of this is landing, I'd love for you to subscribe to the channel and walk with us every day. We explore these quiet truths about the animals we love, and I'd be glad to have you alongside. It costs you nothing, and it tells me to keep making these for you. Now let's get right back to it, because there's a question I suspect has been sitting in the back of your mind this whole time. If two cats, raised in your home with equal love, would still differ, then how much can you actually shape a cat's affection? Are you the sculptor, or just a witness to who they already are? The answer is both, beautifully. And understanding where your power begins and ends will change how you live with your cat. Let me explain. You can't reach into a cat's nature and rewire its baseline temperament. The cautious cat will always carry some caution. The bold one, some boldness. That's theirs, written deep. But what you absolutely can shape is whether that cat feels safe enough to become the warmest version of itself. You don't manufacture affection. You create the conditions where it's free to grow. Like a gardener, you don't pull the flower open. You tend the soil. And what does tending that soil look like? Patience, mostly. Letting the cat come to you instead of grabbing. Respecting the no when they pull away, so the yes means more. Consistency in feeding, in rhythm, in tone. A calm voice. A predictable world. Do this over months, and even a guarded cat learns that you are safe ground. The affection that follows is the realest kind, because it was given, not taken. Freely chosen, the way it should be. This is where the male versus female question finally dies a quiet death. Because the things that actually grow affection, patience, safety, consistency, respect, work identically on both sexes. There is no special technique for males, no separate handbook for females. There's just the timeless work of earning trust from a creature smaller and more careful than you. Do that work, and the sex of your cat becomes the least interesting thing about them. So we've arrived somewhere important together. We've learned that affection isn't selected, it's cultivated. That our power lies not in changing who the cat is, but in giving them room to fully become it. We're 70 blocks into a question that started so simple and turned out so deep. And now, as we near the end of our time together, I want to gather all these threads into something you can carry with you. Stay close for this last part. So let's go back to the very beginning, to the question that brought you here. Males versus females, which is really more affectionate? You came in wanting an answer, maybe a clean one, the kind you could repeat to a friend. And I hope by now you feel the question gently dissolving in your hands, because the honest answer was never going to be a sex. it was going to be everything else. And that turned out to be a far richer answer. Remember the hormones? How neutering and spaying quiet the storms and reveal the cat underneath? Remember the early weeks? Those silent hands that wrote so much of the story before we ever met them? The breed, the temperament, the long, slow years of bonding. Each layer we peeled back said the same thing in a different voice. The sex matters least. The life matters most. And the life, in large part, is something you and the cat build together. Remember the mirror, too, the one we turned on ourselves. How our fierce preferences for one sex often trace back to a single beloved cat. A memory we're chasing, a grief we're guarding. There's no shame in that, but knowing it frees us. It lets the next cat arrive as itself, not as a stand-in for the past. And it lets us be surprised again, which is one of the sweetest things life still offers us at any age. And remember the language, the slow blink, the headbutt, the cat who loves by orbit, staying near without a word. We learned that affection was never one thing, and that we'd been measuring it with a ruler far too narrow. How many of us have had a deeply loving cat all along and almost missed it, waiting for a hug while they whispered devotion in a tongue we hadn't learned? That, to me, is the part worth carrying home. Here's what I keep returning to. The cat in your home tonight did not choose its sex, and frankly, neither did it choose you. But it can choose, every single day, to fold itself against your side, to wait by the window, to press its forehead into your hand and mark you as its own. That choosing, freely made by a creature who could walk away, is the realest love most of us will ever hold. It has no gender. It only has truth. If this conversation has meant something to you, I'd ask 2 small things. Subscribe and follow along so we can keep meeting like this. And share this with 5 people who love their cats, the friends who'd see themselves in these words. Someone out there is agonizing over male or female right now, and you could hand them this piece instead. That small act of sharing is how these quiet truths find the people who need them. And I'd love to hear from you, honestly. Drop a comment and tell me about your cat, male or female, and the way they love you that surprised you. The moment you realized the stereotype was wrong. I read these, and they remind me why this work matters. Tell me, too, what you'd like us to explore next. Your questions shape where we go. This has always been a conversation, not a lecture, and your voice belongs in it. Before we part, sit with this for a moment. The next time someone asks you which sex makes a better, more loving cat, you'll smile a little, the way people do when they know something quieter and truer. You'll understand that the question was always too small. That love in a cat, like love in us, refuses to be sorted by the body it arrived in. It shows up in the staying, in the choosing, in the 10,000 ordinary nights. So go find your cat now, wherever they are in your home. The aloof one, the clingy one, the one who fits no category you were promised. Look at them without the old myths clouding your eyes. And maybe, just maybe, do a slow blink in their direction. Tell them, in their own language, what you've perhaps never said aloud. You'll be surprised how often they answer back. They were always listening. We just had to learn how to speak. Because in the end, it was never males versus females. It was you and one small creature, learning each other in the dark, season after season, until the labels fell away and only the warmth remained. That's the secret nobody tells you. Not which one loves more, but that love, given the room to grow, will outrun every category we ever tried to put it in. And it'll be curled right there beside you the whole time, quietly proving it.